I call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, November 10, 2021. The first order of business is the approval of the September 22nd minutes. Everybody had a chance to look those over? Any additions or comments or any motion there?
Move we accept them.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain in here.
All right. Great. All right, the next order of business is the following new business where we will hear the petition of Rick Barker Properties to rezone approximately 6 703 acres located at 2001 and 2003 Enterprise Drive from I-2 Light Industrial to B5C General Business District conditional to allow the use of the property for pediatric therapy services and warehousing. Tom, you'll be presenting this?
Sure. So if this rezoning is approved, the Center for Pediatric Therapies, which currently has an office at 305 Gristmill, just over the city-county line, will be doing an expansion into the essentially vacant office space of this building, which is right around 4,500 square feet. The issue with the current zoning is the I-2 zoning allows the existing warehousing and distribution use, but it would not allow the office that's unrelated to that industrial use to coincide. The B5 zoning allows both of them. It would allow the office use and it would allow the distribution and warehousing. This is approved. The distribution warehousing use would remain just as it is, and the pediatric therapy use would also go in there. So we do recommend approval of it with the conditions, with the proffers that were submitted. I believe the two tenants will get along very well because I believe they're related. So it should work out very well.
Great, thank you. Who's here to speak on behalf of the petition? If you could please come forward, state your name, sign on the form there, and tell us a little bit more about the project.
Hi, I'm Rick Barker. I live in Danville and have a very close association with your city, having worked here for a long time. My first job in Lynchburg, I went to work for Caskey Paper in 1989. And interestingly, later, Caskey Paper was acquired by International Paper. Then they bought Dillard Paper, and those two companies merged. And so that's my former employer. So it's interestingly that years later, I would leave the company to found my own packaging brand and to buy one of their assets, which I now use to compete with them. And so in addition to having a packaging business headquartered in Danville with a location here, in 2013, I acquired what you may know as Lynchburg Public Warehouse, with locations on Murray Place and Rutherford. And so when we were able to acquire the former Expedex Dillard Paper building on Enterprise Drive, that was essentially an expansion of the Lynchburg Public Warehouse business and model. And then earlier this year, we took our Danville warehouses. We have 4 warehouses in Danville along with the Lynchburg warehouses, and we've rebranded that as Thrive Logistics. So now we have 8 public warehouses between Danville and Lynchburg, along with a small trucking company. And so when I acquired the Enterprise Drive building, that's roughly an 80,000 square foot property. It's roughly 75,000 square foot of warehouse with about 5,000 square foot of office space. And because my shop, my admin that I have in Lynchburg, works out of the Murray Place location, close to the mall, we didn't need the office space. So for the last 3 years, we've utilized the 75,000 square feet of warehouse space, but the office space has been underutilized or vacant. Interestingly, just over a year ago, my wife expanded her business here. My wife, Kristen Barker, is the owner of the Center for Pediatric Therapies, headquartered in Danville, and they have locations in Danville, Martinsville, South Boston, and Lynchburg. Previously, they were on Leroy Bowen Drive behind Charlie's, the restaurant. And so they were renting about 4,000 square feet. And so when they moved to Grist Mill a little over a year ago, they moved into an 11,000 square foot building. And that gave them the extra space for her to expand. She also has a day school for autistic children. And so now Building Blocks Day School for Children with Autism is with the Center for Pediatric Therapies in the Grist Mill location. And so now Kristen has outgrown that space and wants to expand into behavioral services, mental health services for the same pediatric population for either the same client base or their families. And without the space to do that on Grist Mill, and with me having a vacant office, I thought, perfect fit. I have about the amount of space that she needs, and so I did some cosmetic changes and upgrades in July and August, preparing for her to move in September. And I reminded her she needed to get a business license for her second location, and when she did, that's when we found that we had the conflict that she couldn't get a business license because her business is not consistent with the current zoning. Notwithstanding that within 2 or 3 blocks on either side of the building, there are some other medical offices. But with regards to the use of the building, I'd be happy to answer any questions. If you see any conflict with the zoning or with the neighbors, the intended use, I could speak a little to the, towards the number of employees or patients or parking. But I do know because what Kristen imagines with the building, with the density, the number of people that would be entering the building each day is somewhat less than what was originally there when Dillard Paper or Expedex operated out of that building.
Great, thanks. And I don't see anybody here attending in opposition or support, so I think we could close the public hearing and you could stay up and address any questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Did you, I don't mean to, Mr. Barker, but did I see you sign?
Yep, I did not. I'll need actually I do have a pen. I'm sorry.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this project? I want to address to Mr. Barker.
I'm looking at the overhead photograph of it. I have no idea how many clients your wife will be seeing, but is there ample parking?
Yes. Interestingly, if you, trying to think of the diagram shows that there's parking in front of the building, in front of the facade, on the right side, and then that parking lot rolls around to additional parking on the side.
Okay.
And so what Kristen imagines is we'd use the parking on the side of the building for employee, and by employee I mean therapists or therapy assistants, and then that would leave ample parking for the patients or students to park in the front of the building.
Okay. I just want, I'm just looking at photographs, like how many cars can we put there? Because you got one right there, and then a little further down, there's another parking, and then you got the tree island right there. And if you're going to have those young kids there, I just want to make sure they're safe going to and from the building.
Yes,
And there's ample
absolutely.
parking.
It's a legitimate concern.
Other than that, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
You all sound like a very entrepreneurial couple and just happy to see the economic activity that you generate.
Thank you. We're fortunate to be busy. And Lynchburg has been a good market for both of us. Interesting that we do 2 completely different things, but your city does a lot of things well, and I know in some cases Danville has copied you.
Well, you answered my biggest question. I couldn't figure out where the connection was. I was having the hardest time. 2 businesses together, so.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Really, the only concern I have, and that's way too strong a word, is, and I apologize, because I know it has to do with the scale, but, if this isn't a location that she's going to sustain over time, what have we done with the zoning? That's really my only concern. Because it sounds to me like it's a business she's going to want to grow, and I mean, Tom, how big a deal is it? I mean, it's not like we've opened the door to have any kind of things go in there that would be I mean, I didn't see anything on the list that, particularly given its proffer. I'm sure you all have talked about it, but if you just speak to that for a minute or two, that'd be great.
Well, I think you have to look at how the area has transitioned, at least what's fronting on Enterprise Drive. The majority of that property has transitioned from industrial to more of a commercial use over the years, albeit some of it has not developed yet, even though it's been rezoned. I think the point behind this rezoning is that the existing warehousing distribution use is going to stay there. And I don't believe you have any plans to leave. I think if the pediatric therapy use was to outgrow this site, I believe his intent would be, and what was said, is that they would rent it to another office use. So I think it's just giving them more flexibility to use the property, to get the most use out of it. He proffered not to do any type of outdoor storage type retail sales, like car lots, those types of things. I don't think you'd have to worry about that.
I just wanted to raise that point. I think for the use there, I mean, Cham said it best, great situation. I mean, I think, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking about it in a little bit longer term, and that helps. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think there's a shortage of office space like that, that's easily accessible. One of the things when I'm in other places, I see a lot of office development, and to have that little space there, it's something I think there would be a demand even if the therapy center moved out. There's also neighbors that are, like you said, doing similar things. We passed recently one right up the street that was a very similar change. So to me, I think it's it makes sense, and I'm glad that you're able to use both spaces instead of having that nice office space sit vacant for the most part.
Sure, thank you. If I could speak to an earlier comment about maybe thinking of the future, because we don't live forever. So imagine that in 20 years I sell the property. I would imagine that the most likely intended use long-term would be for anyone who had a warehouse operation. They would probably need the on-site office space. So I would imagine in the future would revert back to, common ownership and usage.
Dillard used office space well. I've been over there quite a bit.
It also provides, having more activity in the front side of the warehouse shows that the building is more alive, because as you drive down there, you see a warehouse and nothing happening up front. There are no cars. You'll never see a car. It becomes an empty building. Sure. But if you have activity in front of the warehouse, like, okay, something's happening here. My wife and I, we drove all the way back down to J. Crew and looked at all these other buildings that are empty. They're not being used. And that's like, wow. And we did that the corner there, that still has yet to happen. And it's just, it hurts to see we have all this good real estate already developed, not being used. And then other buildings that are going out of business or not functioning right now. But it does provide the appearance that something is happening at that corner.
Yeah, you're right, because all the activity today is out of the rear entrances and loading docks of the building.
Yeah. So.
Tom, the report mentioned planning is general concern with losing industrial zoned areas, and you replied pretty well explaining why this particular case that's not a problem. But where is the city in terms of overall industrial zone? Are we tapped out with usage? Is there a lot available?
I could definitely send the planning commission a map. I'm not prepared to show you exactly where it is today, but there's obviously some available over in the, I believe it's Lynchburg First Industrial Park, Murray Drive, that type of area. We have some available in the City Industrial Park that off of Wigington Road, the Ivy Creek area. I think the difference is, you know, some of it's owned by the EDA and some of it's in private hands, right? So while it's always a concern that we, you know, we think about preserving the industrial land, I think it's important that we preserve it in the right places, right? And, you know, this piece of property that's fronting directly on Enterprise Drive and everything else is kind of transitioning to more of a commercial type use, it really makes more sense.
No, I agree, and I just appreciate the fact that you guys addressed that and explained why this is a good justification for this request, which I definitely support.
One last question on that same point. If someone were to buy it and want to use it for an industrial use, can it revert back to that?
Well, if they wanted to change it to a use that's not permitted in the B5, yes, they would have to come, they would need to come in and petition to rezone it again. I think historically, the use has been what it is today, all right? And the B5 zoning that's being requested allows that to remain while allowing the additional use. So it makes more sense. I mean, it's obviously set up for distribution. I haven't been in the building, but that's kind of the way the building's set up, correct?
But it is interesting the way that, I mean, to Mark's point earlier, the way the parking is sort of encapsulated so that you know, you don't have to share a parking lot in that sense. I mean, I think that's fairly unique.
Yeah, I mean, the office parking would be, you know, would have its own entrance and would be separated from the loading dock areas, which would be planned, well, photo north and south, right? And the office parking would be, you know, it kind of wraps around that front northeast corner of the
Almost as
building.
far away as it could possibly be.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was definitely an interesting thing. I feel like everybody's in agreement. Can I make a motion that we approve the proposal as stated?
I'll second it.
Okay, any other comments before we put it to a vote? All right, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, it carries. And see you in city council and looking forward to seeing that transition. Really appreciate you showing up today.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you.
Have a good day. All right, any other business? Tom? We do have an odd meeting planned in December, right?
Yes, for
It's the third-
Tyriana, I believe.
The third
we have a
Monday.
quorum. That would be the 15th. You'll be doing a public hearing on the Tyriana master plan.
Okay.
And what?
Tyriana
Okay.
master plan.
Oh, the plan?
And got it all done.
No, Rachel.
Rachel
was the lead on this.
Great.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, I think, Tom, we've got some terms that expire with, of folks that aren't, myself included, aren't eligible for reappointment at the end of the year, correct? Have you been looking at the calendar?
I have not looked at that yet, but I will definitely make a note to do that.
You're not having enough fun?
No, I just, as I said, I was trying to anticipate what's going on.
Right.
so.
It's like COVID times to actually be able to run through like a fourth term and no one even know it, you know?
Yeah. I may have my years confused, but I think this is the end of the latest year chart.
Come up too.
Well, anybody interested in departing?
I just want to verify, I didn't see in the paper today that we have a meeting the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so I didn't see an announcement, so I take it we're not going to have a meeting? Okay.
And the 15th, it was still kind of tentative, that's 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll verify it, I'll email, I'll verify it though.
Thank you.
Great.
Great.
All right.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposition? All right, let's go.
That's what we like it.